there folks, welcome to the channel. I'm glad you can make it. In today's episode, we're going to be making the classic Italian Nduja Salami. The Nduja Salami is a spreadable salami that can either be eaten by itself with bread or added to other dishes like pizzas and pastas. And let me tell you, it is ridiculously good. And it's also the salami that I recommend to all beginner salami makers because of how forgiving it is, and the success ratio is incredibly high. So if you're just getting started out in the wide world of making salami and fermented meat, this recipe has got your name all over it. Let me show you how to make it.
Let's get our meat together. What we're going to do is we're going to weigh it out as we go. And if you check the description box below, you'll find a link to this recipe. In this recipe, we're going to use equal portions pork back fat, and Calabrian pepper paste. And it's this high percentage of pepper paste along with the pork fat that's going to make this salami super spreadable. It also makes this salami incredibly forgiving. All right, so we've got our pork and our fat ready to go. Let's pop that in the freezer. And here are the Calabrian chili peppers that we're going to use to make our paste. Now, if you pay attention to the ingredients, you are going to notice that there is vinegar in this product, and that's there to preserve it. And depending on the brand, if there's too much vinegar, it could acidify or make your nduja a little tangy, which is what we don't want. So I'm going to show you how to fix that here in just a minute. Let's weigh out our Calabrian peppers, and it looks like we're going to be doing a pound of that. Now we also have a pound of fat and a pound of pork meat. This is what the pepper looks like. I'm going to pop it in my blender, and this is now 100% blended into a paste. Basically, it is a very smooth puree, and that's exactly what you want. As far as the spices go, we're going to do salt. Instacure number 2, we've got fennel powder, Calabrian pepper powder, smoked paprika. We are going to be adding just a little minced garlic, and then we're going to finish it off with some beautiful red wine. It's going to be absolutely amazing. So this is what our spice profile is going to look like. This is going to deliver a very flavorful product with a nice level of heat. Now, if you do want it spicier, you can always add a little cayenne pepper. The choice is yours. We are going to be adding a bacterial starter culture to this salami, and the one we're going to be using here is called Flavor of Italy. Now, we talk about salami starter cultures, and it's really nothing more than a collection of good bacteria that you're going to be adding to the meat to help it ferment, the same way you would add yeast to your dough batter to help it rise. Really, there's not that big of a difference. This particular bacterial starter culture is very reliable starter culture. It ferments pretty quick, and it delivers really good flavor. Now, if you already have a bacterial starter culture like TSPX or something like that, then use that. It'll do the exact same thing. Depending on the starter culture, it may take a little bit longer, but not that big a deal. I do want you to pay attention to the best before date. It says June 17th, 2022. That was basically a year and 4 months ago, but no worries. These cultures can last 3, 4, even 5 years past their expiration date when stored in the appropriate environment. Check out the video suggestion at the end of this video where we take a deeper dive into expired starter cultures. So let me show you how I like to use these starter cultures. Notice that I only cut the very tip of that pack open. So just a tiny opening. And what I'm not going to do is dip the spoon into the pack. I don't want to introduce any unwanted contaminants. Instead, I'm going to pour the starter culture into the spoon. Now I'm going to give it a shake to make sure that everything is nice and loose. Grab my distilled water and go ahead and pour that starter culture into the spoon. I wouldn't recommend weighing the starter culture for your recipe, and I'll make an entire video later as to the why. So if you're not subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss that episode. Starter culture goes into the water and the pack gets put up. So we're going to go ahead and close that pack off. And normally I would stick that into a vacuum seal bag, vacuum seal it, and stick it in the coldest part of my freezer. Now we need to let the starter culture rehydrate. That's going to wake up that bacteria and get it ready to start eating the sugars that are in our recipe. To do that, we just need to let it sit on our counter for about 30 minutes while we look at the casings. You could use whatever casing you want to make this salami. I personally like the 100mm collagen casings. These larger diameter casings allow you to age your nduja a lot longer, which will ultimately develop a better flavor. But like I said, if you want to do 60, 70, 80mm, the choice is yours. To prepare these synthetic casings, all you have to do is take them out of the pack. We got these from the sausage maker, and we're going to soak these in some lukewarm water for about really 10 to 15 minutes. All we want to do is soften these casings up, and it actually happens pretty quick. And so you can basically prepare these right before you need them. Into the water it goes. Let's set it to the side while we look at our grinder plate. We're going to grind this a couple of times. The first grind is going to be on a 6mm plate. That's the plate in my left hand. And then our second and third grind are going to be on a 4.5mm plate. If you happen to have a smaller plate, like 3mm, you can absolutely use that plate as well. All right, so let's get this first plate on the grinder. We'll do a triple grind, and then I'll get right back to you. There we go, a triple grind. This looks absolutely perfect. And it is important to remember that the temperature of our meat was below 34 degrees Fahrenheit the entire time. All right, now that we are triple ground, this is going to be so good, it's now time to add the rest of our ingredients. And this is where I want to talk about the acidity of this pepper paste. Under normal circumstances, I would have a problem with the vinegar inside this pepper paste because it would denature the proteins and it wouldn't let me get a good bind for my sausage. But this is a spreadable salami, and so that really doesn't matter so much. What I'm more concerned about is the flavor. I don't want that vinegar to impart a tangy flavor to this salami. And so what we need to do is neutralize it. So let me just grab a pH meter. I'm going to show you what the pH is of this pepper paste. And just remember that anything under about 4.7 pH starts to bring that acidic flavor. And look where we're at right here. We're at 3.9. So this is definitely going to have a bit of a zinginess to it, which you can keep it if you want, or you can neutralize it, which is what I'm about to do here. To neutralize this pepper paste, we're just going to add some baking soda. That's going to help balance out the pH. And what I'm looking for is a pH that's a little bit closer to fresh meat or completely neutral, which is anything between 5.6 and 7.0. So I'm just going to mix that baking soda in there, give it a quick test with our Apera Instruments pH meter, and it looks like our new pH is somewhere around 5.63, which is perfect because that's actually the pH of fresh meat. So this pepper paste is no longer going to bring an acidic flavor to our salami. But remember, this is totally optional. If you prefer a tangier salami, you could just leave it as is and then follow the rest of the recipe. Let's go ahead and add our spices, wine, garlic, and then our starter culture. And this is really where I want the acidification to happen. I want the starter culture to do the job because that's actually going to develop more flavor. I don't want the flavor to come from the vinegar. So there we go. The meat is still very cold, about 34 degrees Fahrenheit, and it is mixing beautifully. And with this particular salami, all you're doing is mixing the meat until everything is well incorporated. Remember, we're not looking for a bind. We're not getting that traditional salami texture. We're just mixing till everything is incorporated, and that's exactly what it should look like. So let's go ahead and get this into a sausage stuffer so that we can put it into its casing. This is a 5-pound sausage stuffer from the sausage maker, and I'm using the largest stuffing horn size that I have. I think it's 1 1/4 inch. This is going to allow it to go into that casing super easy without a whole lot of problem. As we get that meat in there, we do want to avoid any kind of air pockets or anything like that, so you do want to kind of compact it, but it should compact relatively easy because of how loose the mixture is. All right, let's get that into its casing, and I'll show you what to do next. There we go, not a problem. Our meat is packed into that casing nice and tight, and you should definitely do the same. You want to get it in there as tight as possible. I'm using a stuffing horn cleaner to push any remaining sausage meat out of the horn, and there we go. Super, super easy. Also super easy to clean. All right, and that's what that's going to look like. The little bit of sausage meat that's remaining in my hopper, and it's really only just a small handful. We're going to wrap that in some cling film. Because this is a fermented sausage, in a little while we're going to be testing the pH of the meat to make sure that it's okay to start hanging. And I don't want to disrupt the meat that we have inside of the casing. And so this little sample piece right here, that's what we're going to be using to test the pH. And so that's going to go to the side. Let's tie off this salami. All we want to do is make sure that everything is nice and tight. And so with one hand, and it is tricky with one person, you just want to make sure that you get that tied as tight as possible. Once that happens, we're going to add an elastic netting, which is not only going to hold its shape, but it's also going to give us a secondary level of protection in the event that something unforeseen happens. You certainly don't want this Nduja batter all over the floor of your drying chamber. So this is going to help with a little extra support. Now, once you've got it all properly tied off to the casing itself, you are going to want to create a hanging point, and all we're going to do is just create a simple loop with 2 strings, and that's where our Nduja is going to hang from. We do want to give our casing an overall prick. This is going to help some of that moisture escape in the early stages of this particular sausage drying. And once we're done, we are going to pop it on a scale. Now, this particular salami is unique in the sense sense that we're not necessarily looking for a target weight loss. This particular salami gets its flavor from the extended aging period, a lot like a prosciutto. So the first couple of months, it's going to lose a lot of moisture, but then the rest of the time, it's going to be developing its flavor through that aging process. So the weight is 1,418 grams, and I'm going to target about a 6-month hanging period. So 9/16 of 2023 is about 6 months from now. So as you could tell, I started this in March. And once we get to the second week of September, we can pull the salami and taste it, or we can let it age for another month or two. Really, the choice is yours. But a salami of this size should hang for anywhere between 6 to 9 months. And we now need to let this sausage ferment. This is where all of those good bacteria that we added through the starter culture begin to consume the sugar that's naturally found in this recipe. So the sugar from the wine, the sugar from the pepper paste, that's what this starter culture is going to be eating. And as it eats the sugar, it's going to release lactic acid, a lot like sauerkraut. And that's where we're going to get a lot of flavor development. And this is really what I'm after. So obviously you can lower the pH with vinegar, but doing it through fermentation is going to be exponentially more delicious and a lot less tangy. The Nduja is a smoked sausage, so what I like to do at the very beginning of the fermentation stage is stick it in my cold smoker. This salami is going to ferment quite fast, primarily because there are so many different types of fermentable sugars in the recipe. And so getting the smoking stage out of the way right out of the chute, for me, I've always found to be a little bit easier. Now, when it comes to fermenting, there are 2 requirements, temperature and humidity. You want to make sure that the temperature that you are fermenting your sausage at stays between 70 and 85 Fahrenheit. And you want to make sure that the humidity of the area that you're fermenting is above 90%. So I'm just sticking a pan of water with a little towel that's sort of draped over both sides. Those are going to act as wicking filters. And while this is cold smoking over the next 10 to 12 hours, that moisture is going to wick into the air, keeping the humidity inside this smoker relatively high. Now, we are cold smoking this, so no heat is going to be applied. And as far as the wood goes, use whatever wood you like. I'm using a combination of oak and cherry. And I am using Bella's cold smoke generator from Smokin' It Smokers. This is going to maintain that below 85 degrees temperature that we're looking for. So once we get that fired up, we are going to let this do its thing. And with this particular salami, I'm going to just recommend that you test the pH sooner rather than later. So under normal circumstances, it takes about 24 hours for the flavor of Italy starter culture to properly ferment your sausage. But because there is so much sugar, and the temperature of my room is in the mid-80s, I do believe that we need to test it at 12 hours, and that's what I would suggest you do as well. Test your pH after 12 hours and see where it's at. What we're looking for as far as the pH for this sausage is anything below 5.3, but I really don't want to go lower than 4.9. So the range of pH for this sausage should be 4.9 to 5.3, which is going to be your typical range for an Italian salami, something that's not too tangy but loaded with flavor. And look at that, our pH is 5.00. Absolutely perfect. And this was at 12 hours. So the natural sugars in the wine and in the pepper paste and the Calabrian pepper powder that we added really aided in that fermentation. It made it happen very, very quick. And now we can go ahead and move on to the drying stage. Now, I'm using a drying chamber from the sausage maker, but if you have a basement or a cellar where you can hang this and the temperature is relatively cool, nice and dark, you should be good to go. What you're looking for as far as temperature goes is an average of 55 Fahrenheit or 13 Celsius and an average humidity of 75 to 80%. Now you can find that in a basement, a cellar, or in my case, a drying chamber. And you're going to let this dry for anywhere between 3 to 6 months, depending on the diameter of your casing. It is October the 17th, 2023, and this Nduja has been hanging in our chamber for 7 months. It looks and smells incredible. And I think it's about time that we cut this open and see how we did.
All right, guys, it's now time to taste our Nduja salami. This has been sitting out at room temperature, so it's very soft, very spreadable. Oof. It smells incredible. Let's just give it a bite. Wow. Talk about a powerhouse of flavor. Let me just take one more bite. So delicious. Wow. The Calabrian chili pepper is an amazing pepper. I mean, it's spicy, it's smoky, incredibly flavorful, and it just adds a beautiful freshness to the sausage. The complexity of the meat is tremendous. I mean, you've got this extended aging period, and so the entire time the meat is just developing these deeper, meatier flavors. And what's interesting is that the flavors just continue to bloom on your tongue. I mean, I'm picking up these subtle notes of fennel and wine, and the overall mouthfeel is extraordinary. There's this beautiful unctuous quality about it, which just adds to the experience. I give this a 10 out of 10. This is easily in my top 5 favorite salami of all time, not only because it's delicious, easy to make, but like I said at the beginning of this video, it is incredibly forgiving. So if you're just getting started, making fermented meats and salami, this project has got to be on your short list because it's just simply amazing. Another thing that I love about the salami is its history. Now, I gotta be honest, it is kind of hard to pinpoint the actual origin story of the Nduja salami because, like most Italian sausages, there's multiple versions of the story, but the story that I particularly like is how this salami was created out of poverty. This is a poor man's sausage. The Southern Italians had to create a cuisine utilizing the most undesirable parts of the animal. They called it the quinto quarto, or the fifth quarter. So basically you had the 4 quarters of the animal that went to market, all that got sold off, and the poor Southern Italian farmers were left with everything else. Well, they called that the fifth quarter, or the quinto quarto. Now you move forward a couple years when Napoleon Bonaparte appoints one of his French commanders to be the king of Naples. His name was Joachim Murat, and this particular king is supposedly the one that introduced the Southern Italians to the French sausage andouille. Andouille was a smoked sausage. Well, the Southern Italians basically took this andouille sausage and they made it their own by applying the quinto quarto style of cuisine that they had, along with a local pepper called the Calabrian chili pepper. And what was created was a sausage that was incredibly cheap to make, that could also be hung to dry in the less than ideal climate of southern Italy. What that gave the folks in southern Italy was a very inexpensive, shelf-stable meat that could be enjoyed by the poor year-round. The French andouille sausage became the South Italian Nduja sausage, and I hope you get a chance to make it. If you have any questions about today's recipe, leave them in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video or got anything out of it, be sure to give it a great big thumbs up. We are rounding down this year's Celebrate Sausage with only 4 episodes left, and I don't want you to miss a single one. So if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to click that subscribe button and that notification bell, because what we've got lined up for you tomorrow, you're not going to want to miss. Thanks for being here. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.